Yeah, now it has come.
Great, sir.
Yeah,
So, Aditya sir, I would
it's,
request you to switch off
yeah.
your mic, please.
Yeah,
Say again.
just a moment.
Okay. Somebody will be recording it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So please let me know when do I start.
Yeah. Next 30 seconds.
Okay. So who will be presenting the poster?
It is already done.
Okay.
We are starting within 15 seconds. Okay.
Okay.
I will write start.
Okay. So first of all, warm welcome to all of you in joining us in this session on radicalization of warfare with Brigadier Vinod Datta, sir. GCTC believes in conducting sessions with eminent personalities who have varied expertise on different subjects and enlighten the youth on the same. I would take definitely 5 minutes to introduce Brigadier Vinod Datta because his experience cannot be restricted into just few seconds or can be said in a single breath. Brigadier Vinod Datta, sir, is a former Secretary DCMG Disaster Management and has an extensive experience of almost 3 decades of in disaster management. He is presently a senior advisor and member of Center Research and Consultancy Committee at Center for Disaster Management Studies, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, New Delhi. He is also senior consultant at the National Institute of Disaster Management. Sir is a warrior and a logistician, has practiced various nuances of management and life varied experience in inventory and materials management. Handled SCL in Kargil War with excellence. Also the logistics advisor to the Royal Government of Bhutan and has been faculty in the College of Material Management, Jabalpur. He holds two master degrees in management and strategic studies, law degree, MPhil in management, and PhD too. Been an alumnus of coveted Defence Services Staff College, Wellington, Army War College, and IIM Indore. He's also attended courses on supply chain management and logistics and project management at MDI Gurgaon. A visiting faculty to Army War College, Defence Services, Staff College, Wellington, IIT Kanpur, Amity University, Mewat University, Indian Railways Institute of Transport Management, Lucknow, IIRD, Shimla. Traverse the logistics and management field and the academic world. The natural progression was to share knowledge and inspire self development. Brigadier is a keen golfer and a voracious reader. Presently, he is a senior advisor in PNB involved in strategy and key achievements. He has a deep understanding of business processes, stakeholder, and interdependencies. So I would like to welcome you to this session, and it's an honor to have you here to talk on radicalization of warfare. With your expertise, I think we are at your mercy when it comes to this subject, and understand and learn the most from your skill set, your knowledge. Um so I will hand over the floor to you to conduct your presentation and emanate your knowledge on the same.
Thank you, Simran. Good evening and Jai Hind to everybody. First of all, let me thank Honorable Shekhar Dutt ji, Mr. Aditya Tikku, and the students, because आप मुस्तकबिल हिंदुस्तान है. So it is always pleasure to speak to the Bhagya Vidhatas of the India, because you are going to write the history of India, and this century belongs to us. So have no doubts about it. And you are the people, because we are on the other side of the hill. But as they say, when you have silver on your head, you have a lot of experience in your heart. So having served in insurgency areas, being part of Kargil war, I will share some of my experiences of warfare. And I have that singular honor that my family has this Limca Book of Records for having the maximum army officers in the world. And if you, wherever I go for my blood test, the blood is green and not red, as they say. So without much ado, I will just traverse you through the various stages of warfare. I'll just share the my presentation. I'll be talking about the radicalization. Can you see the slides, please?
So you have to click on the present now option.
Okay.
We can see, sir.
Okay. I'll just make it full screen. Okay. So can you see the video also?
So have you
Can you?
played the video already?
Yeah. Can you see the camera?
So there's only one slide that we can see. It says
Okay.
radicalization warfare.
Yes, so we are able to see this.
Okay. So now I'm going to talk about radicalization of warfare. And before this, I take you to the subject proper, I will just take you back in the history that how, the warfare has been defined. And warfare is an art which is as old as, civilization itself. Because wherever there have been people, there have been communities, there have been clans, there have been fights which have been there. So if you go back earlier, there used to be a concept called mantra yudh, and which was war by council. When you see the king was weak, and he always have the participative management, as you must have seen in mythological days, where the religious advisor, the political advisor, the warfare advisors, the military advisors, they advise the king. Then came the second stage, which was called as the Prakash Yudh, which was a warfare which was totally open. So it was an open warfare. And in this, the time and space was specified. Then we come to, and Sun Tzu has very nicely defined in his book Bing Fa about this warfare. Then we come to Guda Yudh, which means the clandestine warfare. And from here, the radicalization also takes its lineage. And it was a covert method of warfare. And then was the Koot Yudh, and that was diplomatic warfare, which was there, Kootaniti. So these were some of the forms of warfare which were there. And if you go back to the medieval and modern times, I'll just take you to 1520 AD when Machiavelli, he wrote about the art of warfare. And in 18th century, the Frederick the Great, he put a lot of emphasis on strategy of exhaustion. He exhausted the enemy by his warfare techniques. And then comes the Napoleon strategy, the strategy of annihilation, because Napoleon believed in total annihilation of the enemy. Then we hear about the Clausewitz theory of warfare, which was highlighting the strategy of attrition. And then you see Jomini came, and he also started writing about how to tackle the enemy. And if you come back to the Great Wars, that is 1914 to 1919, that the first Great War or the World War, there was an attrition in Europe. In Second World War, Blitzkrieg was the main philosophy, which was from 1939 to 1945. And in 1949, another theory which came to the surface or to the spectrum of the world, that was the Mao strategy, Mao Zedong, who propagated the nuclear theology and to live off enemy cohesion. And if you see the present face-off also, or the expansionist policy of China, it is an offshoot of that. Then came the era of Cold War. It was basically strategy of containment. The world was bipolar. On one side you had USA, and the other side you had USSR. And the Cold War also ended with disintegration of USSR. Then we came in the post-Cold War era, was the strategy of CI and CT, counterinsurgency and counter-terrorism. Then comes the strategy of destruction, like what USA did in Afghanistan and Iraq, what Russia did it in Chechnya. Then came the strategy of security and development. And the example is Malaya. And then strategy of negotiations and cooperation, what we are seeing in Iraq and Pakistan, with special reference to NWFP. And then came Lenin and Stalin era, and in which the country and the army must be closely knit, and the rare areas should be kept intact and important. So now, having seen or having traversed the various stages of warfare, now we will come down to the radicalization of the warfare, which is our main subject. Raymond Aron has written, an action of violence is labeled terrorist when its psychological effects are out of proportion to its purely physical results. Now, violence, psychological impact, ultimately the terminal objective is political effect, to destabilize the political balance in a particular country, to destabilize the political regime in that particular country. Then, if you want to summarize, in short, terrorism is a form of psychological assault or warfare that weaponizes the emotions, most notably fear and outrage. It is basically by putting fear, whether it is society, whether it is a segment of people, whether it is a community in particular. Knowledge and understanding are among our best means to defeat terrorism. Because if we are wiser, if we are educated, if we use our prudence, we are definitely going to overcome the terrorism. And let me tell you, the present operation, just a second, the present operations which are going in Valley, Operation All Out, has really broken the back of these terrorist tanzeems which are there, and they are finding it difficult to justify their existence. Now, there are, I have listed these 6 traits of acts of terrorism. Of course, terrorism has got many forms and manifestations. But some of them are the use of violence or the threat of violence directed against the person or the property. So use of violence, which is directed towards individuals, towards persons, or towards property of those unable or unprepared to defend themselves. So it is basically the weaker or the underbelly of the society which is made the target. And that's how the radicalization also finds its way. Primarily to create fear, एक तरह की दहशत जिसे फैलाते हैं, और उर्दू में जैसे कहते हैं कि दहशतगर्द उनका नाम रखा गया है, तो it amplifies their actions, and or to outrage peaceful balance in the society through the propagation of public knowledge with the intention of affecting public policy and public policy of community actions. So these are certain traits which are there, and if you see, the one trait mushrooms out of the other traits. Now there are some certain fundamental theses which are there. Like if you see the characteristics, if you see the capacity of terrorists, or left-hand side, if you see, if the capacity of terrorists or that particular tanzeem or that particular organization is strong, they will carry out overt operations. They will carry out large-scale actions or threat of actions. They will have fear as the paramount vertical in their thinking or in operations. They will have certain goals and policies. And if the capacity of terrorists is weak, they are going to have covert operations. They are going to, let me hide it. They are going to operate covertly. They will operate in small scale actions or threat of actions, outsized psychological impact, fear and outrage, goals of policy and growth. One of the glaring examples in this is the Al-Badr organization, which was almost defunct. It is the Chinese involvement which is there, which has now given a new flame, a new flavor, and a new direction to this organization by funding them. And since they have their headquarters in Manshera, there is a lot of activity in terms of communications, in terms of training, in terms of recruitment, which has taken place. Now, if you see, the process which is being followed, it is basically the radical terrorism by individuals. So these tanzeems or these organizations, they do some kind of indoctrination, they do some kind of brainwashing, and their target is the youth which is there, which is in impressionable mind, because they want to exploit the state's inefficiency, the governance inefficiency, or the voids which are there by not providing enough employment or meaningful employment to these youth. Because when I was in Kashmir, because I also have a singular honor that I have done schooling, my college. I am a product. Tikku Sahab will, appreciate. I am a product from Amar Singh College, which is in Gorkji Bagh. So I know the pulse of the valley so very well. Then the radical terrorism by sub-state groups. Then the terrorism by criminal groups. You see, they will intimidate you. Then the terrorism by the social groups. Social media, if you see, the terrorists are now utilizing this media to a great extent. There are handlers who are on social media. There are sleeper cells. There are people in the disguise or with the fake IDs. So you have to be very, very careful. And especially, it is my earnest request to the youth. Then terrorism by military forces at war. And then terrorism, which is being tackled by the state regimes. If you see terrorism by military forces at war, ISI is the best example. Because if you see, ISI is mostly thriving on patronizing these terrorists. There is a report, UN report, which is there, that Masood Azhar in 1998 was being given $60,000 by the ISI. Now, most of these tanzeems, now since Pakistan is scrounging the bottom of the financial barrel, they are finding it difficult to fund these organizations, and they are under tremendous pressure because there is no recruitment in the valley. The success rate or the killing of the terrorist has already crossed 200 in the last year, and the security grid which is there in the valley is so synergized that the police forces, the armed forces, and the various other intelligence agencies are on a same platform. Then there are certain states which sponsor terrorism. So the state regime, terrorism by the state regime is there. And I don't have to tell you, because you are wiser, that which all states are funding these kind of organizations or tanzeems. You take the case of Afghanistan. And let me also tell you, without malice to anybody, it is basically the Muslim states or the Islamic states which have been affected by the terrorism the most. Now, the terrorists see themselves as the fighting a war to defend or to promote an essential and a just cause. You see, they will take a cause and they will support that cause. That yes, we are going to give you a state which will have all kind of facilities, which is going to be, like an utopia. But you see, most of the countries who have sponsored terrorism, what kind of फाइनेंशियल स्टेट दे आर इन, उनकी माली हालत क्या है, आप अपने पड़ोसी को ही देखिए. 116 बिलियन डॉलर्स का उनके पास कर्ज है. Saudi Arabia is now asking for the money back. Various other countries are asking their money back. The other day, you must have read the report that in Malaysia, one of the Pakistan Airlines aircraft was held as ransom, or it was impounded. The PIA hotels have been sealed. So, this is what the terminal objective of terrorism is going to be there. Because the world is not going to take this kind of smoke screen for a very long time. Terrorists are surprisingly normal and not clinically psychotic. You see, some people think that, yeah, they are psycho cases. Yes, they are being administered drugs. They are being administered such kind of, doses. But yes, not all of them are psychotic. They are, a youth who have been misled, who have been misguided, who have been radicalized, जिनको सब्ज बाग दिखा देते हैं कि आप जिहाद के नाम पे या किसी किस्म की आड़ में you must wage a war against the state. Terrorists are rational actors. When I say, you see, they are normal human beings who were lured by these terrorist organizations, and then they were indoctrinated. So they were normal, citizens. They were normal youth who were dreaming of a good future. And being rational actors at war, they pursue strategies. Now, war aim goals, the purpose of the war strategies. You see, what is the aim of the war strategies? How to conduct a war tactics, how to fight a battle stratagems, tactics of deceiving or outwitting the enemy. Unfortunately, these tanzeems or the organizations over a period, and if you see the people who are who have been misleading, I won't say that they have been leading these organizations. I will use the word misleading the organizations or these tanzeems. Some of them are very intelligent. Most of them were rich. If you see Osama bin Laden, he was a very rich person. He was a very intelligent person. So they had that kind of prudence, they had that kind of intelligence, but it was channelized to a negative thinking, to a thinking which was anti-state, to a thinking which was anti-society. Now, if you see this slide, what are the various, modus operandi or the tactics which the terrorists are using? First is intimidation. Terrorism by strong capacity actors, state, military, and social terrorism relying on fear. So they will try to intimidate you. Then they are going to initiate you. You will have initiation. And terrorism by weak capacity actors, radical terrorism by sub-state groups relying on fear and outrage. So they are going to initiate you slowly but surely. Attrition is going to be there, and then the evolution is going to be there. Now, how do they carry out this intimidation, which ultimately takes you to the radicalization? Is primary for strong capacity, a terrorist emphasis on fear. वो किसी को या तो बंदूक दिखा के या बंदूक थमा के वो एक इस तरह का खौफ पैदा कर देते हैं, या इस तरह की एक फियर साइकोसिस या फियर पैदा कर देते हैं कि लोग उनसे घबराते हैं. They want acquiescence, obedience. Because in Kashmir, I have seen, while carrying out these operations and all, we have seen that they used to initially come, they will stay with the, some of these agents of the sleeper cells or the sympathizers, and they will initially give them some money or some kind of lurement, and later on, at the gunpoint, they will tell them that, yes, so many people will come, you have to feed them. They will misbehave with their ladies, they will misbehave with the people, and it is the kind of fear which, they set in among the people, and which will result in submission and end to resistance. देखिए, कश्मीर में भी 5 ही ऐसे डिस्ट्रिक्ट्स हैं which are terrorism infested. 15% जो आपकी पॉपुलेशन है या जो आवाम है, they may be favored or inclined towards terrorism, again by virtue of fear. 85% of people in Valley want peace. So the useful for weak capacity terrorist, जो छोटी तंजीमें हैं, the terrorist fear among target community. The revolutionary discipline within the group compel radical rivals to give way or to join. Now, recruitment is a big concern because the recruitment is not taking place. The security forces have ensured that the youth are meaningfully employed. They are channelized. Now, initiation. For radical terrorists who want to act as a precipitant or a catalyst, you see, they will show you videos, they will show you pictures, they will tell you, oh, what a beautiful life we are leading, what a heroic welcome we get. But all those welcome, all those deeds are out of fear. Because एक टेररिस्ट की जो एज होती है वो 1.5 से 2 साल से ज्यादा नहीं है, उसकी म्याद उतनी ही है. Want to exploit the outrage of the enemy oppressors so as to reveal the wickedness and the weakness of the oppressors. It appeals to a very weak group with the great expectations but few resources, explaining why most terrorists of the first and second waves have failed. Now, attrition. For somewhat stronger radical terrorists who cannot overpower the enemy but have sufficient numbers and resources to inflict losses on their enemy. And they want to get the enemy to invest unsustainable psychological and physical resources until they are worn down. Now, when we come to the evolution stage, a strategy of moving to a higher level of strength, resources, and numbers. Now, mark these words: strength. The strength of these terrorist groups have fallen. The resources are shrinking, and the numbers are dwindling. So that's the terrorism in Valley is now singing the swan song. It is in the last stages. Important question is, need it be theory, intention, or simply opportunism? Theory of escalating stages goes back to Mao. I just gave you in my introductory talk, and particularly prominent in the third wave. Now, examples of evolution are FLN of Algeria, PLO, FARC of Colombia, Tamil Tigers of Sri Lanka, Hezbollah of Lebanon, Hamas of Gaza. So from Zarqawi to JTJ and AQI to al-Baghdadi, ISI, ISIS, and then finally to the Islamic State. You see, they have been always talking of this, the caliphate, that there is only one, caliph or the khalifa who's going to rule the entire world. It is इस तरह से उन्होंने यूथ को गुमराह करते हैं that they are so radicalized that they have been, shown some kind of, utopian picture. Sabz Bagh दिखाए जाते हैं. They have been given that, yes, your family will be looked after and you are fighting in the name of, whatever religion they belong to. Now, Mao Zedong's progression of revolution warfare. You see, if you see this, they started with guerrilla warfare or guerrilla bands. Then they graduated to mobile warfare, guerrillas and regulars. And ultimately, their terminal objective was to have a positional warfare or a conventional warfare or regular forces, which is heavily substantiated with these guerrilla warfare. So this is what Mao Zedong had, propagated. Now, if you see, terrorists study military theory and practices. By no stretch of imagination, we must undermine, I told you earlier, most of the leaders who are being shown here, whichever organizations they have been heading, they had above average intelligence. So never undermine these people because they are always thinking 2 steps ahead of you. Now, if you see the global strategies, like if you see Osama bin Laden, he always believed in global conflict. The globe should remain totally embroiled in kind of a global conflict. Whereas Abdullah Yusuf Azam always said that global participation should be there between the organizations. If you see the Islamic State, there's a picture of January 2015. Is this a terrorist group? If you see these red spots which are there, this shows the presence of the terrorist organizations which were there. Now, what is a state? It is a territory, or is it resources, or forces, or monopoly of violence, or civilized behavior? Well, I'll say yes, the happy and a healthy mix of all these things, all these flavors makes a successful state, a happier state, a progressing state. Now, what is next? For there will be a next terrorism is too easy, and it is absolutely part of the modern repertory of violent political resistance. What I hope to teach or to convey is compassion for the immediate victims of the violence, understanding the real threat. You must understand that what is the real threat, sense of proportion about the danger and the response, resolution to avoid becoming the terrorist unwitting ally. And to be radical terrorism, it must be an ism, because there is some kind of cult, there is some kind of thinking, there is some kind of ethos which is added by this ism, whether it is terrorism, whether it is radicalism, part of the repertory of violent political resistance. And radical terrorism is a form of warfare, entry-level warfare, because the kind of form and manifestation it has achieved, when it is really very important that we must understand the nuances of terrorism, the form and manifestation of terrorism, and protect the youth, because it is also the onus of the state. You see, I told you, this century belongs to us. This belongs to Asia. And China finds a rival in us. And that's why all this kind of, commotion which is going on the border, it is because China wants a unipolar Asia and a multipolar world. So it is a design which has been well thought, well documented, well mandated, and we should learn and understand the contours of international strategies. I have finished. If you have any questions, I'll be too glad to interact with you, because I have also pen, and I'm going to note down most of the good points which are going to come from you.
Thank you so much, sir, for the presentation. Honestly, when GCTC got to know that you're coming for a session on this specific subject, everybody messaged me all sorts of questions. And I have loads of questions to ask, but we'll make sure that we restrict to the timing. Um, First of all, I really appreciate I was completely involved in the presentation, and from the process of radicalization of what should be our appropriate response to terrorism. The first question that we have from you is that the UN recently released a report claiming that criminals and violent extremists exploiting the pandemic to build their support networks, undermine trust in the government, and even weaponize the virus. Can you comment on this, considering your experience in disaster management?
Yeah, let me tell you, this pandemic has really taken the entire world by a surprise. And, there are thinkers who think that, yes, it is part of a biological warfare. They also feel that, yes, it has been done deliberately. Of course, nothing has been proved, or the concrete results are not available. But yes, if you even for a second, if you start believing those thinkers, yes, one particular country has achieved, it has brought the entire world to a grinding halt without firing a single bullet. So yes, we should be prepared. And yes, in this pandemic, when the entire world has come to a screeching halt, the youth is all bottled up. And yes, we are riding on a demographic tiger, China and we, because we have surpassed China as far as the population is concerned. And we have the most intelligent, most innovative youth capital or the human capital in the world. जो हमारा सरमाया है, जो हमारी capital है. We should not allow these tanzeems, these organizations, because there has been a rise of 52% in the mental illness state in India itself. So we must utilize this youth in such a manner that they are meaningfully employed, they are meaningfully utilized, and they do not fall prey to such kind of radicalization, which may be through social media. You see, what is social? We have to be very, very, particular from these, these digital merchants, the social media, whether it is, I don't want to name anybody, they are the dream merchants. So be very, very particular. And, this social media is such a quicksand because, they don't have to knock at your door. They don't have to come and meet you physically, but they are watching you, they are seeing your actions, and they are going to lure you. So be very careful. And yes, the disasters, can be very, very, serious cases can be there, crisis management situations. I can give you a number of examples where by people have entered into your network and they have held you for ransom.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. That was actually really involved. It comprised of real surprising facts to us. So there's this question. We have certain questions from Neha Ramesh. She's one of the research coordinators in GCTC. She says there is a substantial research to suggest that radicalization is comparatively easier at time of war. Initially, it was theorized that this was due to growing nationalism accompanied by war. Later, this was disproved, and some claim that it was due to a lack of sustainable unemployment. Do you think economic development in key sectors can reduce radicalization?
Yeah, I agree with Neha, and very nice question she has asked. I must thank her for this. Yes, I told you it is the state responsibility also, because you will realize that yes, if we have the the best human capital or the young population, it is the duty of the state to cater for their well-being, to cater for their education, so that they are channelized into nation building. Obviously, जहां गुर्बत होगी, जहां गरीबी होगी, वहां बंदा क्या करेगा, आप मुझे बताइए. He is going to fall prey to such kind of ruses which are being thrown by these people. अरे हम आपको नौकरी दिलवा देंगे, हम आपको ये करवा देंगे, आप ये देखिए, हमारे वहां आप आइए, एक बार ये करके देखिए आप. So the employment, and it is sad commentary on our about on various governments. I am not focusing my this thing on one particular government, that we are not able to generate employment opportunities. There are large number of establishments which are underemployed. There are large, आप ये देखिए, कहीं आप रेलवे स्टेशन पे जाइए, 10 खिड़कियां बनी होंगी, वहां 6 पे ताला लगा होगा, 2 पे लाइन लगी होगी, which will be almost 2 kilometers long. You see, we are ready to spend on intangibles. जिस देश में इतनी गरीबी है, वहां you have to create, and let me tell you, Indians are the most satisfied community. हमारे यहाँ अगर आप 20,000 की भी कोई तनख्वाह की नौकरी मिलती है, the person is satisfied. और एक बंदे को अगर जॉब देते हैं तो उसके साथ 4 लोग जुड़े रहते हैं. But unfortunately, lakhs and crores have been spent on wasteful expenditure, but the government, they promise you of employment. आप ये देखिए कश्मीर में ये क्यों प्रॉब्लम आई? Because आप, if you compare Kashmir with the UP, 8%, if you see the UP has got a population of 22 crores plus. 8% of money they get in UP, and 11% of money is going to the J&K. But the governments there, they have been doing that Bandarmart kind of thing. That money is it does not reach the right people. आप कश्मीर में देखिए, आप एक सनत नगर है जगह बरजुला के आगे, आदित्य साहब को पता होगा. अब वो उसका नाम ही रह गया सनत नगर. इट वाज ए इंडस्ट्रियल टाउन व्हिच वाज देयर. सनत तो है ही नहीं वहां, इंडस्ट्री है ही नहीं.
So should I go ahead with other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how you mentioned on how cyber warfare is now a modern technique of warfare, and how social media is one of kind of a boon, is proving to be a boon for the youth, especially when it comes to radicalization. So Neha has asked this one question, that the Blue Whale Challenge was a wake-up call to the world. It showed us the power that someone behind a screen can have on some can have on an individual and claim the lives of hundreds of youngsters. So how would you fight a war against such hostile and elusive forces?
See, I'll tell you one thing. There is a difference between a leader and a statesman. You see, a leader is looking from one election cycle to another election cycle, whereas a statesman is looking from one generation to another generation. And it is not that in India we don't have statesmen. We have very fine leadership. There are people who are above all these things. So what I want to request the government, that yes, you must take the youth on board. You must create opportunities for them. Let me tell you, सिवाय भारत के हमारा हर देश लोहा मानता है. You see, if you see the recent elected government in America, you see how many Indian faces are there, and we are all proud of it. But हमारे यहाँ क्या है? The focus is somewhere else. हमारे यहाँ एक बड़ी अच्छी कहावत है हिंदी में कि स्वर्ग तो सब जाना चाहते हैं, लेकिन मरना कोई नहीं चाहता. हर आदमी ये चाहता है कि मर हो जाए और स्वर्ग मुझे भिजवा दीजिए. लेकिन आपको जन्नत में जाने के लिए या स्वर्ग में जाने के लिए मरना लाजमी है. When I say this, that means you have to, work hard. Then only you will get the results. You see, I get totally impressed by your achievements, but I don't want to, do any kind of backbreaking. And I don't realize that how much, hours of, mehnat and that hard work which you have put in. This concept of, this Blue Whale challenge which was there, this is a great challenge in India. Let me tell you, we have 52 million students. And now, the benchmarking has been put so high that आपने वो जोक सुना होगा कि किसी बच्चे से पूछा कि भाई कितने मार्क्स आए आपके, उन्होंने कहा 99%. बोला यार हमारे टाइम में तो 3 लड़के पास हो जाते थे इतने मार्क्स में. So, the inflation in education standards has also today, I'm telling you, when I was working in the, I invited some people. So there was a lady. I asked her, you haven't come for the party? He says, sir, my daughter's result had come. So for a second, I was taken aback. मैंने कहा यार कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं कि the result is not favorable. Then I realized कि आजकल कोई fail तो होता नहीं है. So I asked her, he says, how has she done? She says, sir, she got just 91% marks. So I said, that's all the more reason you should have come for the party. But if you're not satisfied even with 91%, and the girl is right, because those 91% are not going to, take her anywhere. So such benchmarks or such standards have to be lowered, and they have to be made realistic.
So the next question mainly focuses on the concept of religion and how it plays a role in radicalization. This question has also been raised by Neha. In your opinion, is radicalization based in religion in any way stronger than other forms of radicalization, which is political, racial, etc.? If yes, why? And if no, why is it a popular misconception?
Well, radicalization per se is not religion centric. Yes, it has a bigger slice. And as Neha has already said, that radicalization can be, political, it can be community based, it can be color based, it can be creed based. So that she has very, very amply, clarified. So what we have to see is that the radicalization or anti-radicalization, if I can use the word, should start from the school days. You see, I studied in a college which was a missionary college, and believe you me, on Mondays and Thursdays we used to have moral and religious education classes, MRE classes they used to say. And if you could not score 75% marks in those MRE exams, you were not allowed to write the exam. So such kind of initiation, you see, what is happening is that due to disintegration of families, due to nuclear families, the family values are also dwindling. People don't have time. We have gifted our children to the digital world, that, okay, you take this gizmo, be happy, don't bother me. आपने शास्त्रों में बड़ी अच्छी चीज सुनी होगी ना, धीरज धर्म मित्र और नारी, आपत्ति काल परखिए चारी. धीरज, पेशेंस. पेशेंस तो है ही नहीं. आपका सेल फोन अगर 3 चक्कर काटने लगता है, you start having withdrawal symptoms. Dharm, religion, follow some kind of religion. It is basically, you see, it only reinforces your, whatever religion you are following. It is that, unseen force which keeps you binding. Dheeraj, Dharam, Mitra. Have good friends. They are going to be like, you see, Lord Krishna also had a counselor in the name of Uddhav. And Nari. You see, if you do not, Nari is synonymous of power. And if you do not respect them, if you do not equate them, in fact, why equate? They should be given a higher pedestal. And it was also given. It was only during the Mughal period that the ladies started staying indoors. Otherwise, they always had a very, very high pedestal in the society. So radicalization is, yes, the religion has a bigger slice, but yes, we must also insulate youth from other kind of radicalization also. It can be political. It can be economical.
So definitely, I agree. I believe what are all the values that you have mentioned, we must imbibe in youth, because forces that we are combating these days, especially on the social media, which is one of the major influencer for today's youth. I believe the sticking to one's values is really important. Thank you so much for giving us this reminder. The next questions are is that which is raised by Diva Jain from, she's also a research coordinator in GCTC. She said, what are the measures taken to combat radicalization, and does it disproportionately target Islamist terrorism?
Yeah, you see, as I told you, a greater, proportion of, extremism or radicalization or terrorism has been sponsored by some of the Islamic states. And as I told you, and they are the states which have been affected very, very badly. You take the case of Afghanistan, you take the case of Pakistan, you take the case of, Turkey, whichever, Syria, they have been totally devastated. और ये वो आग है जिसमें आपने एक बार शुरू तो कर दिया, but you will end up in ashes. I'll just give you an example. The terrorism in Punjab started. I want to tell you that in 1958, it was President Ayub Khan. In 1958, he had drawn a blueprint that, yes, we will destabilize Punjab. So you can imagine, the kind of vision, the strategic vision Pakistan had. It is just immediately, after getting independence, they had already decided on this. So the radicalization process will also start. They will start, planting those seeds in your mind, or they will put that spark in your mind, which is going to turn into an inferno in the days to come.
So there are certain more questions raised by Neha
Yeah, yeah.
Ramesh. She says, could you go into detail about the application of laws of war in countering terrorism?
Uh, you see, terrorism, let me tell you one thing, and these are my personal views. Terrorism in Punjab, if you see, I was posted there and I was part of, certain operations, whether it was Operation Woodrose or whatever. Terrorism can be really done away with, but we must have a political will. If you have a political will, everything can be sorted out. Punjab, terrorism was totally finished because the government wanted it. So the government should, firstly, yes, I always say, yes, you must negotiate with the organizations, with the people who are, not satisfied. But yes, if it is taking too long, in the interest of state, in the interest of community, you see, more than 1 lakh people have died in Kashmir because of these violence. You see the damage in property. You see the damage. One day's bandh costs you 20,000 crore rupees in India. So the government has to take, because now, there are almost more than 3 lakh troops in Kashmir or in J&K and, such like insurgency infested area. You see the cost to the state, and it is you and me who are paying for it. Otherwise, it is a developmental loss. That money could have been, utilized or diverted for making some colleges, medical colleges, hospitals, schools, roads, and what have you. So the government has to take a call, because one small segment cannot hold you for ransom. And that's what these, terrorist groups, they want, because they cannot take that state head on. And let me tell you, if a proper strategy is made, if proper blueprint is made, the terrorism can be done away with. As I told you, in Kashmir also, there are only 5 districts which are infested. There are only 15% people who are inclined to think on those lines. Either it is by fear or by pressure or whatever, or even radicalization. So all these things you have to, weigh in such a manner that you will be able to tackle this radicalization problem.
Aditya sir? I think Brigadier sir got disconnected.
Hello?
Hello, I
Hello.
think
Yeah, I'm here.
okay, sir. We can't see
Yeah,
your video. Okay,
yeah.
please
So,
continue, sir.
yeah, yeah, Simran. Can you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me, Simran?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. So please continue with your answer, sir. We lost you for a minute.
yeah. No, I was telling that the government will is required. If the government is willing, any terrorism or any insurgency or any such kind of anti-national activities can be tackled. And you have to have a blueprint that, yes, because if you see the cost benefit analysis, it is costing a good fortune to the state. It is a developmental losses. You see, people are losing, in terms of life, in terms of property, in terms of, social grace. So the government has to, take a overall, call that yes, enough is enough. They can negotiate, they can discuss, they can also, give options to them. But yes, definitely you require some kind of, because there has to be some method in madness also.
So the next question, I believe it is the most speculated subject that we have seen in the recent and even the past in the recent years. So do you believe that the war on terror by America was an excuse to start proxy wars for selfish gain? Please discuss the repercussions of the same in the current fight against radicalization.
That's a very good question. Yes, even I subscribe, or I endorse the views that wherever America has gone, you see, America has not come back, at least in Gulf. And, it had gone to bring back peace or tranquility in that area. But it is now more disintegrated, fragmented, and not at all peaceful area. So what I want to tell you is that the government, or the government of America, since America does not fight any battle on their own soil, so it is very easy for them to send sinews of war to somebody else's country and then remain. And the biggest attraction was, the oil which is there. Today, Venezuela, it's a very great ally of America, and they're exporting oil substantially. So yes, they had come with the aim to sort out this, mess which was there in Gulf, but unfortunately, it did not happen, and America's footprint is already there.
The next question, sir, it's by Manmeet Singh Arora. He's also one of the research coordinators in GCTC. He asked whether war on terror was a pretext to conduct operations in Iraq.
Could you just repeat it again?
Whether war on terror was a pretext to conduct operations in Iraq.
Yeah, yes, there are some thinkers, who feel that yes, America had gone with a with an aim uh, with an aim to, exploit the oil resources there, and America has not come back. Iraq has gone from bad to worse, and various other countries. So yes, this can be a long. It's a matter of debate. We can, discuss on this till cows come home.
So another question asked by him, he says, terrorism as a word has received intelligence community attention and has become means of action as a war on terror. How can this action be justified?
Well, the exemptions can be. Uh, I mean, this again. I told you the state has to take a call. It is not that the framework is not there. It is not that the resources are not there. It is somebody has to take the call. And unfortunately, uh, uh, people are not very, very sensitive. If you see, insurgency in Northeast, when we were young officers, I mean, Northeast was really, really bad. Today, you see Punjab. Punjab is, totally liberated of terrorists, and it was done in a very, very swift operation. It is. You see, I have studied in Kashmir. I know Kashmir. I have such good friends in Kashmir. वो कहते ना कि घर फिरदौस है बर्रुए ज़मीयस खमीयस थमीयस. It was a paradise. It is a paradise. And if you weed out, certain toxic leaders, and if you listen to the organic leaders, I'm sure we can find, via media, where the terrorism can be put to a.
So the last question from my side
Yeah.
is, can we differentiate between extremism and terrorism, or can it be interchanged whenever war is justified?
Well, you see, extremism is, there is a difference between terrorism and extremism. Extremism may be your, totally thinking which is echeloned towards one kind of, thinking, one kind of views, one kind of vision. It can be totally polarized. Whereas terrorism is, as I told you, in the initial slides of my presentation, it is basically to terrorize the society. It is to put that fear psychosis in the society. It is to create that sensation so that the state understands that the existence of this group is there, so that the state is forced to get you on the negotiating table. And what has happened? If you see JKLF leader, he himself, one of them leader, was a terrorist. Today, he is a flourishing leader. And I find no reason why the state should, pardon such people. So the state has to take a call on this. And yes, such people yes, they can be given, pardon or this thing if somebody realizes that it is his mistake. But आप उसे एकदम फर्श से उठा के अर्श पे तो नहीं बिठा सकते.
So this is my last question. It's just now I want to open the floor to the participants, and during the session I've been receiving messages from research coordinators that they want to ask you various questions. So I'll open the floor. I'll let them speak to you directly. So
Yeah.
guys, you have the floor. You can speak to sir directly and ask your questions.
Good evening, sir. I should say it's an honor being in your presence. I'm Neha Ramesh. I'm a research coordinator with GCTC, and I really appreciate the opportunity. So I'd like to start off by asking you your personal view on advanced interrogation techniques as a tool of counterterrorism.
Neha has always been asking very, good questions, and this is yet another, feather in her cap.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
interrogation is very important, part of counter-terrorist measures. Because what happens is, as I told you earlier, out of fear, out of, any kind of, action by the terrorists, what happens is that even if I am willing to share some information, I may not do it, that I may get singled out. And there are very few terrorists who are generally, apprehended or they are alive. Because in the operations, they generally, I told you that the life of a terrorist is 1.5 से 2 साल तक ही उसकी जिंदगी होती है. In past, there is a subtle, shift in the operations of the terrorists also. If you see, when the insurgency started in the 90s, I remember when I had my first tenure there, the operations were very, very well planned by these terrorists. The operations used to last for 3-4 days, 5 days. Now, the terrorists, their training is poor. Their recruitment quality as per the terrorist standards is poor, and the security grid has really improved a lot. So the operations don't last for more than a day or so. So that is a very happy trend, which these and credit goes to the security forces. So what and suppose we have apprehended some of these people. The moment we apprehend, there are two things. One is information, and the other is actionable information. What we must do is, you see, the actionable intelligence should be immediately attended to, and we must take action. The discussion should be done on camera rather than on, on TV. Though I'm a TV panelist myself, and we have been. But yes, whatever action you have to, you can't say, हम देखेंगे, हम ये करेंगे, हम उसको ये कर देंगे. तो इस तरह की चीजें नहीं होती है. And the moment the terrorist organizations, like, which are the launching pads, right from Rawalpindi till Manchera. Chakotay and whatever. They should be immediately engaged. Today you have that kind of technology. Today you have that kind of interrogation where everybody leaves a footprint on digital media. आजकल डिजिटल मीडिया में आपको नहीं इतना पता होगा अपने बारे में जितना गूगल को या इनको पता होता है आपके बारे में. So we have that kind of technology. We don't have to cross borders. We can engage the targets. We can register targets and engage them. So interrogation is very, very important. But yes, there is a difference between intelligence and actionable intelligence. And actionable intelligence, all the intelligence agencies have to work on the same page. उनमें दो चीजों की कमी रहती है, अहम और वहम. पहला तो ये कि यार I am, so and so organization of intelligence. Why should I share information with so and so? He should walk up to me. दूसरा वहम कि यार इसको पता लग गया तो my existence is at stake.
Sir, I'm very glad you brought up actionable intelligence because I was building up to that question. So, sir, interrogation is different from advanced interrogation techniques, which include practices like waterboarding. So my question is the intel that you receive constitutional for it to be actionable? Because those are very different things. You can have actionable intel that you acquired unconstitutionally, and you can have vice versa. So what is your opinion on the ethical qualms associated with such an intel?
That's again, thank you, Neha, for bringing up this point. You see, every vertical or every segment have their own ethics. And as they say, everything is fair in love and war. So, आप अगर पुराना चाणक्य के टाइम में भी जाएं या पुराने जो मैंने आपको 4 phases बताए थे of warfare, तो हमेशा से जासूस या इस तरह की इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसियां हैं, उनके नाम चाहे मुख्तलिफ रहे हों या उनका चेंज हो गया हो, लेकिन उनका एम यही रहता है. You always rely on information, because if you don't have intelligence, I'm sure you will not be able to plan your operations. So what is required is, of course, a lot has been done. You see, now all the intelligence agencies in the army has been put under one gentleman called Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA. And they are supposed to be complementing each other. But unfortunately, the verticals are such that it doesn't happen, or the information is so, delayed. And in information, what happens is, you see, you have to weigh 2 things. First is the source, whether your source is reliable. And second is the, credibility of information. So you have to have that kind of network. And yes, there are funds which are allotted for such tasks. And the guidelines have been and advisories have been issued by the government that there are no questions asked, because if you have informers or such like people, I mean, their sanctity or secrecy has to be kept. But yes, we must have that kind of prudence, that we must differentiate between the source and the credibility of information. That's why in intelligence they have, A1 information, where it means that the source is reliable and the information is also reliable. You may have C3, the source is also not reliable and information is not reliable. So this is how it is categorized.
Sir, I'm again very glad that you brought up categories of information. So my understanding of the Interpol as an organization is that it is it's a house of research, R&D, and intelligence sharing from what is made very not public on their website. So my question is, if an agency like Interpol can get global intelligence to be, I can say validated through their system, why do we not have such clearing systems more often? Because Interpol's obviously proven to be good. Like their FATF guidelines help apprehend terrorists over virtual asset use almost every day. So, and their algorithms have been proven on point on multiple occasions. So why don't we do it more often if it works?
Well, let me tell you that the bottom line is that if you don't have any work accountability, you see, yes, I am a die-hard army officer, and I have no qualms. And firstly, the Indian Army doesn't require any kind of advertisements or any kind of accolades because we are the best organization in India or in the world at least. If you don't have work accountability, if you don't hold people accountable, because people know it. In India, what happens? I'll tell you. The moment the terrorist act has been done by the terrorists, we make such beautiful story like Salim Javed kind of story that वो आया, उसने वहां से पान खरीदा, फिर वो उसने एक पुरानी साइकिल खरीदी, फिर उसने वो ऑटो रिक्शा में बैठा, फिर उसने बॉम्ब बनाया एंड 7:10 पे उसने बॉम्ब रख दिया. I find no reason why the same intelligence could not have been, collated, interpreted, and action taken when you have the entire framework to yourself. Why are we always reactive? Because we know it that yes, we are going to give some story and people will get it. You see why Indian Army is one of the most efficient organization is because we are a leadership predominant organization where the accountability of a leader, if the mission fails, you see, in Indian Army, there is no runners-up prize. You can't say that, there was a war and we came second. Or if there is a mission failure, the leader or the commander who's heading it, he's eased off. Whereas nothing happens to a person. If there is an intelligence failure, if there are people who have died, the head of that organization, he should be asked to explain that yes, it is your fault. In good old days, if there was a train accident, the railway minister used to resign because they always felt yes, it is my moral duty. You see, why did the chief of naval staff D.K. Joshi resign when then there were two ships which collided? I mean, he was not the captain of the ship. But yes, he said, yes, there has been a training, failure, and I take the responsibility being the chief of the naval staff. So that kind of work ethos has to be instilled. It is not that only uniformed people or the people who are wearing olive greens are responsible to the state. It is everybody's duty.
So thank you very much for that. I have my last question, if everyone would oblige me. So my last question today is a rather unique one, and I couldn't find an answer for it anywhere, hence I ask you. Uyghur Muslims in China go through some of the worst human rights violations since the Holocaust. They call the places that they are kept in Xinjiang regions as concentration camps or rehabilitation camps. Yet, why isn't there any Islamic attack on Chinese soil?
Yeah, there you are. And nobody is making a, halla gulla on these Uyghur Muslims. People are talking, you see, India is such a fine country where we respect all religions. We are so secular. And people still say that we are not safe. I mean, how ridiculous. Uyghur Muslims, as you have rightly brought out, they have been put in the concentration camps. They are being radicalized. There is total Hanization of that area which is taking place. But nobody is speaking on this. एक शायर ने कहा था ना कि जुल्म करता है जमाना और हम शर्माए जाते हैं. You see, India is a formidable power. We must take up this case. So what we must do is that, yes, we must take up the issues which are world specific, regional specific, or country specific. And yes, we can corner China on this. That you are abetting all these kind of things in our side of the country. Tibet, you take the case of Tibet. But unfortunately, we don't raise these issues. We are not, bringing it out in the open forum.
Sir, but the Pakistani Prime Minister claimed that he didn't know what a particular reporter was talking about in open media, in front of Reuters reporters, in front of the Herald reporters, and he claimed that I don't know what injustice you're talking about. So, and India has been famously silent about the issue. No
Yeah.
one has ever made a public comment about it. For all the pro-Muslim banners we want to hold up, we haven't made a single comment about it. Why?
Yeah, I agree with you. You see, Neha, वो पाकिस्तान प्राइम मिनिस्टर का तो ये था ना कि मुझे सब याद था आपके आने से पहले, मुझे सब याद आएगा आपके जाने के बाद. So they have selective memory. And you are right. We don't make the. You see, what we need is a muscular nationalism. Because the kind of discussions which we have, the other nations read you. That हमारे यहाँ यही होगा, अब ये बर्दाश्त नहीं किया जाएगा. कोई चीज कुछ हो जाती है, ये बड़ा चिंता का विषय है. न्यायिक जांच के आदेश दे दिए गए हैं. If you start probing that person, then he say ये विवेचना का विषय है. This needs investigation. So
Last
all
question
this.
for Ragini,
Yeah.
please.
Sorry to interrupt you, Neha and sir. I
Yeah.
would like to raise some of the questions, sir. While listening, it's an opportunity to listen your and seeing your presentations. Sir, I have two questions coming up in my mind again and again. First of all, how does the penology and criminology affect the radicalization? And second one is, yes, as you said, there the social media or facilitates radicalization. So how these communications can counter radicalize it? How?
You see, what you have to keep in mind is that you have to keep the youth inclusive in all kind of activities which are there. You have to find. You see, it is not that anybody wants to become a terrorist by choice. It is the circumstances which force him. It is basically you have to see that what kind of future or what kind of canvas which we have painted for our youth. What kind of opportunities we have. Just take an example. We are almost 140 crores. Do you think 1,100 Indian administrative officers can manage this country? There is high time that we must increase the establishment. The doctor to patient ratio, if you see, I think any child who's scoring more than 70% marks, if he has uska rujhan hai medical ke liye, engineering ke liye, या administrative jobs के लिए, you see, I keep going to Labasna for IAS Academy for lectures. And I was, I have interacted with so many people, and one of the faculty there, they said, sir, ये जो इम्तिहान में पूछा जाता है, वो कभी हमारा काम नहीं आया. I have been a district collector, I have been this. So what we have to redefine, revamp, and reformat our education system, our youth policy, and the how the youth has to be channelized. This is a very good human capital which we have, and if you do not, you see, in army there is a saying, busiest troops are the happiest troops. So they keep you always busy. So you have to keep everybody busy, because you all have so much of energy, and if it is not utilized or channelized in a right manner, you are going to utilize it somewhere else, because you cannot remain bottled up for long.
Ragini, you're muted. So if you, okay.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Sir, on my first issue, penology and criminology effect on radicalization.
Yeah, you see, whatever rules and regulations which you make, you see, these agencies, these authorities are, they are supposed to be enablers, but unfortunately, they are the biggest impediments. Our, system is such, एक जंगल में देखा कुछ, गाय भाग रही थी, तो एक भैंस भी भागने लगी उनके साथ. तो उन्होंने पूछा कि आप क्यों भाग रहे हो? ये तो पकड़ने के लिए, तो गाय के लिए आए. तो दी बफेलो रिप्लाइड कि मुझे 20 साल लग जाएंगे ये प्रूव करने के लिए कि मैं गाय नहीं हूं. So she also started running. So that is the kind of system which we have. You see the cases which are like. Do you think we require only those many judges? Why can't Ragini be a very good judge? Why can't Simran be a very good district collector? And why Neha cannot be a very good CEO of a whatever government department which is there?
So it has
Okay, sir.
been
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
so we are out of time now. We have somehow it was so it was full of knowledge and full of anecdotes and the fun metaphors that you have used. With I think this has been the most fun session that I've attended. I believe and I roll as if this was the best reflection of the excitement that we had that you were coming. Um, and we really wish that you could be a part of our further sessions as well. Now I would like to close the session, and I hope that you could be a part of the further sessions that we conduct on various different subjects and expertise, because uh, honestly I don't think even 1.5 hours was enough with you, and we still have like budding research coordinators who are just wanting to ask more and more questions to you, but we are on time, we're running on time. So we believed in with our future sessions we could incorporate more knowledge, expertise, more fun metaphors, more experiential anecdotes. So thank you so much, sir, for being here. It was an honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind. Thank you. Thank you. It was great interacting with you. Wonderful participants.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you. It's actually an honor, sir. Thank you once again.
तो आपका मेटाफोर मुझे हमेशा याद रहेगा, स्पेशली गाय भैंस। आई थिंक आई यूज इट